Welcome to the Solid Verbal. And now, Dan and Ty.
Dan Rubenstein, it was the first of two national semifinal games, and boy, what a finish.
It delivered.
Yeah, to say the absolute bare minimum, Miami versus Ole Miss delivered in a very, very big way. Congratulations to the Miami Hurricanes, who emerged victorious courtesy of a last-minute drive, culminating with a Carson Beck run for a touchdown. Your final score, 31-27. The Miami Hurricanes going to play for their first national championship in quite some time, and they're going to do it at home.
Yes.
They're going to do it at home. They're going to play in Hard Rock Stadium to see if they can get their first national championship in 25 years. Let's break it down. Let's talk through all the highlights, the lowlights, and everything that got the blood pumping. There were plenty of those moments in this football game, Dan. At points throughout, usually when we watch big games like this, you and I are messaging back and forth the whole time. We were speechless.
Silent. It was silent. Yeah. I was my Google Doc pounding away. Yeah.
There was a deafening silence in the Slack chat between you and I, because we just were transfixed by what I think we were seeing in that fourth quarter, especially. We could talk about the first half. Obviously, it differed greatly from what we saw in the second half, and in particular, the fourth quarter. But this game really had a nice mix of all the things that we like about college football, which made it a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, I don't even know where to begin, right? When you think about opportunities for both of these teams, when you think about the slow start for Ole Miss, Miami playing Miami ball to start this game out, when you think about, you went through some of the numbers that Miami nearly lost having dominated time of possession. They were great on third downs, right? What did you say, 11 of 18 or 19 or something like that?
That's right.
They dictated this game in a lot of ways until the second half, or till the back half of the third quarter on, where Ole Miss was terrific, right? Just, getting whatever they could out of the ground game. But it was really Dejon Stribling, Daquan Wright had a couple of huge catches. Trinidad Chambliss obviously came alive once again in the second half. And there's footnotes upon footnotes to everything we can say. Miami still had the penalties. Miami had 4 dropped interceptions. Miami didn't have both starting corners for essentially the back half of this game. After they lose, Xavier Lucas on that targeting call. So I guess he missed the first half of the national championship. And we don't know what OJ Frederic, who was out at halftime, what his injury status is. But look, this was sort of a culmination, everything that was Miami's season was poured into this stew of a game, right? So you have the red zone interception from Carson Beck. On the tipped ball, it was not fully his fault. He didn't throw it directly to a player. But you have the missed opportunities. You have brilliance, absolute brilliance from Malachi Toney. You have pounding of the rushing attack from Miami, which is a big deal in this game at multiple times. The one thing that I don't think we really truly had over the course of maybe the final, 3 quarters of this game, whatever it was, is the one thing that I think we sort of led off with in terms of our thoughts in this game was, man, what is Ole Miss going to do with this Miami pass rush?
Right.
And the answer is they tempoed them, they got rid of the ball, and they blocked them up pretty well.
They held up really, really well. I was looking at the stats. Miami came away with just 1 sack in this game.
Yeah.
And for the most part, both Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor were held mostly in check. They were not a huge factor. Obviously, it was something that Ole Miss a game plan for. And to the point, Ole Miss, we had talked a lot about how Ole Miss was going to tempo those guys. They needed to play quick. They talked about it on the broadcast. I know there are a ton of other shows and writers who were talking about the same thing. This wasn't any great secret. We talked about that until we were blue in the face. What we didn't talk much, if at all, about was Miami deciding we're going to counter a quick strike Ole Miss offense by playing painfully slow.
Right.
They had nearly 45 minutes of possession in this game. There's only 60 minutes in a football game, Dan. You can do the math on your own to see what that skews out to, but Miami had a ginormous edge in terms of time of possession, and it became rather apparent after we got to about halftime. I'm just looking at the drive chart here right now. 1, 2, 3 drives for Miami that went over 7 minutes. There were a number of others that were, well over 3 minutes as well. You did not have that on the Ole Miss side. That just wasn't how Ole Miss played all year. It wasn't how Ole Miss played in this game, maybe save for one drive, but it was definitely a deliberate effort on the part of Miami to try and keep this Ole Miss offense off the field.
Yes, and to Ole Miss's credit, the reason they were in this game is they did get some of those key stops later on in this game. They were able to give themselves the opportunity to, win this game. This is obviously intentional. Ole Miss plays very quickly and has all season long. They were top 10 in pace this season, and I want to say Miami was like sub 100 in pace this year. So this was very much not intended for this game specifically, but this is who they've grown into all season long, and it paid off for Miami. I don't know if any one of us really looked at, and we I think respect Carson Beck's athleticism. He has shown the ability to scramble either for buying time or getting tough yards. He did it against Ohio State. He's done it, when it's needed to give Miami something. It was just a great read. Obviously, that side of the field cleared out on the game-winning touchdown run from Carson Beck. But a wild one, an absolute, like, Keelan Marion, who obviously they like that matchup a ton, was a major factor. CJ Daniels had his plays as well. They rotated in Charmar Brown for a lot of tough yards as well. It's still unbelievable that Miami sort of did everything they wanted to do and won by the absolute tiniest margin. And you know what? Winning is a skill.
Winning's a skill.
And Miami tapped into it immaculately on that last drive.
So a couple higher level thoughts on this game from my perspective. We talked about it coming into this one. I think we got some confirmation of it coming out of this one. Much of the focus was obviously on the offensive line, but we also talked, as many did, about what Miami could do up front with its offensive line, because the way that Cristobal has built all of his teams has been from the inside out. He's an offensive lineman to his core. And so we saw that offensive line on the Miami side really dictate early on in this football game, right? You speak to what Miami did on the ground in total, 191 yards. This was a really good showing from Mark Fletcher. You mentioned Shamar Brown, 54 yards and a touchdown on the ground as well. They were very much able to use that to try and gas out the Ole Miss defense, keep them on the field. There were moments in this game, especially down the stretch, where it looked like they were starting to tire out, and who could blame them? Miami ran, like 30 more plays that Ole Miss did. They were on the field for pretty much the entirety of the evening. So Miami's clearly got the line advantage going into this one. We knew about it. We knew that they would probably be able to run the ball. They did their best to press their advantage here, and I think that obviously played a huge factor in getting them to where they were. Secondly, game ball to Carson Beck. Okay, Carson Beck, he did have the interception. I don't think it was his fault. It was a tip pass at the line. He was crazy efficient with the football. There were a couple tight window throws.
Yep.
There were a couple that had you kind of like puckering up a little bit, like, okay, that was a decision. But Carson Beck's ability to navigate the pocket, Carson Beck's ability to go on the move, especially in a high leverage situation like we saw in the fourth quarter on the game-winning score, Carson Beck's ability to move the football calmly in the face of pressure, calmly with the game on the line. I saw some people commenting about this on social media. Listen, the world that we're in now in college football is one where you got to pay to get what you need at the quarterback position.
Right.
And you can make a pretty strong case that whatever they're paying Carson Beck, he was worth every penny, especially for a moment like this. I know the stats for the first two playoff games haven't been great, but they didn't need to be. In this one, they needed him to step up, and I think they got exactly what they were hoping to get when they brought him over from Georgia. So game ball absolutely goes to him. And then on the flip side of things, I got to credit Ole Miss again, just for their ability to never be out of a game, because we talk about how Miami dictated the pace of play, how it felt like they had the advantage, especially on the offensive line, how the defense was wearing down. You could see it. on the Ole Miss side of things, and there were definite moments in this game where they were not that far away from seemingly being out of it. I counted 4, maybe 5 balls from Trinidad Chambliss that should have been intercepted by Miami, 2 of which were dropped, 2 others, at least 2 others that were.
I think there were 4 that were like flat out dropped.
There were a bunch of drops. I
Yeah.
mean, there were plenty out there, I think, for the Miami defense, but Ole Miss's ability to just sort of navigate all of that, to know that they're going to have a big time shortfall when it comes to time of possession and plays versus Miami, but still finding a way to get it done, almost finding a way to get it done on that final drive with virtually no time left.
Correct. 18 seconds to start that drive off, I believe. Yeah.
Moving the ball down the field with ruthless efficiency to get within scoring distance. I mean, they had a legitimate shot, as they mentioned on the broadcast, to call a real play and try to get it into the end zone. It didn't work, but they moved the ball crazy quickly down the stretch, 40 yards in 18 seconds. They just needed maybe 25, 30 more in order to get this one through and win and get the W. So I can't credit them enough for A, their ability to come back, and B, their ability to do all of this. Lest we forget, all of this with the storm of Lane Kiffin clouding everything that Ole Miss did down the stretch. For Pete Golding, for that coaching staff to kind of cobble guys together, the guys were coming and going the whole time through. For them to get to this point and still be in a game of this magnitude and very much look the part. That to me is, I think, a huge credit to what they're going to try and build now under Pete Golding at Ole Miss. So I credit both teams. This was a hell of a game. Another one of those deals where it's like you're sitting on the couch and after seeing a million run plays in the first half, you're wondering to yourself, like, is it going to be difficult to stay awake in the second half? We thought the same thing in the Sugar Bowl.
Yep.
Not when Ole Miss is playing, man. When Ole Miss is playing, you got to stay awake because you never know what's going to happen. So this was a barn burner through and through. And what are your thoughts? I don't know. I've been dominating the airwaves here. What are your thoughts?
You're good. So I come back to 2, not plays, but kind of moments in this game. So I was following along with Manny Navarro, our friend who covers Miami. And in the fourth quarter, when they get the targeting call, which I thought was the right call on Xavier Lucas, he gets ejected. And then Miami, I don't know if it was the next play or the next couple plays, they get an immediate late hit call, right? That moves. So as you're talking about, what, 30? Well, not 30 yards because it was halfway to the goal. I don't know, it was an 8-yard penalty or something like that. And Miami stood tall in the red zone on that drive. And Manny Navarro specifically said, Xavier Lucas is out. They're now out. They're both their starting corners. They're playing sloppy, whatever he was implying. And the word I believe he used was Miami looks like they're unraveling. This is the start of the fourth quarter. They make the red zone stand. They tackle Trinidad Chambliss on an attempted run around the right side. And then there's a drop in the flat on third down and they settle for the field goal. So, okay, there's the difference between, 31-27 and 31 all, I guess. There's the 4-point swing there. And then they never really showed a close replay. There was a 2nd and 10 somewhere around midfield, somewhere I think in Ole Miss territory on that final drive for Miami when Carson Beck was flushed out of the pocket and sort of threw it, but didn't really throw it away. And it kind of went through the hands. I don't know if it was Centarian Perkins. I don't know who it was, but Herb Street made some reference to, like, if you're throwing it away, you got to throw it to the 12th row. And it was like, they didn't show that it maybe was kind of close to being a Carson Beck game sealing interception in that moment.
Right.
And for Carson Beck to sort of calm down and keep at it and lead them down the field and continue that drive, I thought was enormous as well, right? Just all these little moments throughout the game where something could have gone catastrophically terribly. That's barely English for Miami, but they're able to sort of reset, take a deep breath, and keep going. I thought ultimately it was a difference because between the penalties, between the ability to dominate and not run away with this game, there was also the moment, I want to say, after they go down 19-17, where they're leading basically the whole game until that point.
Right.
It's an uneven drive, but it's pretty good. And they get a Malachi Toney 36-yard tunnel screen touchdown. So, like, the willing, even though it's not going terribly well at the moment, of Malachi Tony and this Miami offense to success, I think just was everything.
Well, and in a sense, it is sort of something that breaks tendency for Miami, because Miami hasn't been in terms of what they've done on the season. This isn't to say they don't have explosive playmakers, but if you look at the Miami offense over the course of a year, it's not one that profiles as one of the more explosive in college football. It just doesn't.
No.
But what did we see in this game? In particular, some busted coverage, right? Keelan Marion gets that, was it 52-yard touchdown pass earlier in the game on a busted coverage, just safety. They showed his eyes. He kind of crept in, wanted to cover the tight end, cutting across the middle. Instead, Keelan Marion breaks one over the top, clear for a touchdown. That was, I think, the highlight for Keelan Marion. He had a good game, 10 targets, 7 catches, 114 yards, and of course that score. And then you've also got Malachi Tony, who we've known about all year. And Malachi Tony, they use him in a bunch of different ways. I want to talk about that in a second. But Tony was 5 for 81, also had 10 targets. But you just find the ways when he's out there that he impacts the game. It's not always about making circus catches. It's not always about yards after catch. He's one of the better blockers, one of the better run blockers from the receiver position in college football as a true freshman. And they showed that time and again, him out there willing to put it all on the line, knock somebody over, or at least get in somebody's way to open up a hole and get a couple extra yards on the ground. So these guys, I thought, time and again tonight showed that when the moment presents itself, whatever the season was or wasn't in terms of explosiveness, who cares?
Yeah.
But we saw it on display tonight where there were moments, and Miami won those moments. Miami won those moments when they had the football. They were very, very difficult to stop. They were difficult to get off the field. I may have over-exaggerated a little bit. I've got the number in front of me now. 41 minutes and 22 seconds time of possession.
Still.
Miami dominated, obviously, in that category. Ole Miss comes away with just 18 minutes and 38 seconds. They did run 28 more plays, as I said, 88 to 60 in total. This was clearly part of the game plan for the Miami Hurricanes to try and keep this Ole Miss defense on the field, keep the offense off the field. We obviously saw what the offense looked like down the stretch when they had their backs to the wall. So it proved to be, I thought, a rather effective strategy for a good chunk of the game. But as we saw a week ago in the Sugar Bowl, you just can't keep Ole Miss down the full way through. Not with this offense and not with the way that Trinidad Chambliss played. That's the other side of this, right? Like, we can talk about Miami, and obviously Miami's now going to have an opportunity to play for a championship on their home soil. But Trinidad Chambliss, man, the run that he had through the playoffs now, I mean, the run that he had all year has been remarkable coming over from Ferris State. But the run that he had, especially these last 2 games, the Sugar Bowl against Georgia and now the Fiesta Bowl against Miami, 2 real high leverage moments. And yeah, there were a couple throws that, as we said earlier, could have maybe gone in Miami's favor. But his ability to step up in a key moment, like, I was watching this thinking to myself, this dude, like, why don't even bother coming back to Ole Miss? Just go pro. Like, it's a very weak quarterback class.
That's true.
Somebody will take a spin on Trinidad Chambliss to see what he can do, because he's mobile. He's got the arm. He's accurate. He didn't seem like he was all that rattled in some of those key moments down the stretch. That's the type of dude you want on your team. Ole Miss is lucky they got him.
Look, he was playing Valdosta State in the national championship last year.
I know. How did they stop him? How did anybody stop him? Yeah.
The ability to play like this this isn't even an FCS to FBS.
No.
This isn't even like G5 to, the SEC and the college football playoff. Yeah, like just and was going to go to where? Temple? Is that what you told me?
Well, Temple wanted him. Temple was early on him until Ole Miss came sniffing around, and then it was over. But Casey Keeler wanted him. They found him. And can you imagine the boon that would have been for the Temple Owls in year 1 of a new coach and an American that was very winnable this year?
Should point out that Kewan Lacey, after his 73-yard run, he came back and he had some sort of hamstring something, compression legging or something. Was not a huge factor, but at least came out and ran hard and gave them everything he could. But in terms of what Ole Miss could and couldn't do offensively, you got the sense that they were like, it's not going to happen for us on the ground in any sort of meaningful way. And that's fine because Trinidad Chambliss is more than enough with DeJon Stribling and, Caden Lee made plays, Daquan Wright, but was not a factor. They didn't sort of lean on Logan Diggs like I felt like they would have with a healthy Kejuan Lacey, perhaps. But they were still in position to win this game. They were absolutely still in position to win this game. And Akeem Mesidor was out for Miami at this point of the year. Everybody's hurt. Everybody's going to need an extra tank of oxygen, whatever the case is. So this was one of my favorite games in a high leverage moment that I can remember. The fact that it was the 4 lead changes in the fourth quarter, the fact that we got so much variety in terms of a rhythm of the game, that we got 2 doinks. I want to say, was it in the same quarter? One good, one not good? Like, I don't know. I thought this was a Stefan game, right? That like this game has it all. And I really do hope, and we're, 24 hours out from reacting to the Oregon-Indiana game. I hope that game can give us some of the inanity of this game. Is that a word? Inanity?
Sure.
The quality of being inane. I just thought it was great. And Ole Miss down 2 more assistant coaches in this game from where they were last week, including the Ginger Ninja, Joe Cox.
Yeah.
Miami doing what they did and surviving, thriving, checking every and any box that they needed to check. Look, the CJ Daniels catch, that huge third down catch. You can just go down a list and be like, this isn't happening if not for that, for both of these teams. And look, on a certain level, that's what football is. But on this stage, you're just like, how does Miami bounce back if they don't complete that pass? And I guess it sets up 4th and 6. But I'm deeply in love with this game and feel for Ole Miss fans, thrilled for Miami fans, and what a finish.
We had 4 lead changes in the fourth quarter, which obviously added to the drama.
Mm-hmm.
As you mentioned, there were interesting kicking moments in this game. We had the 2 doinks for Lucas Carnero, one of which doinked through, the first of which hit the upright, I think, from 52 and doinked directly back.
Yeah.
So we had a little bit of everything in this one. If you are a college football fan, Miami now again advancing to square off against the winner of Oregon and Indiana. We're going to find out the winner of that game when they play on Friday. And I suspect as many people listen to this, they'll already know the result.
Yeah, of course.
People don't always listen. People don't always watch right away. But we are recording this immediately after, as the clock on at least the East Coast has flipped over to Friday. And my question to you now, as somebody with a real rooting interest in the Peach Bowl between Oregon and Indiana.
I could go either way. Continue.
As you look at the Miami Hurricanes, how do you feel about that matchup both ways? We'll have time. We'll have a week plus to dissect this one and try to figure out how we feel about it and where the keys and matchups and edges and all that stuff are.
Yeah.
But knee-jerk reaction as you look at Miami, who do they match up better against? And what to you jumps out in just thinking about what these matchups could look like in the national championship?
Man, I don't even know. Both of these teams are, look, with what Miami wants to do, which is dictate physically, both of these teams can stop the run pretty effectively. Like, have the dudes up front. I give the linebacker edge to Indiana kind of clearly in this moment, but Oregon safeties play the run tremendously well, and they have a scheme that allows them to sort of be pretty varied with how the safeties are allowed to come up and play that run. So I think that's an interesting matchup. Man, that Oregon's losing both of their coordinators to head coaching jobs and I guess the portal closes during preparation, right? For the national championship, and the national championship game is the 19th. So I guess technically there's nothing they can do portal specific the weekend leading up if Oregon is able to beat Indiana. It'd be very cool from like a narrative perspective on, like Fernando Mendoza's from Miami. Obviously there's the connection with Mario Cristobal and the Oregon Ducks and all of the baggage there, which I think has subsided some. Although, you watch Mario Cristobal call for like a 4th and 2 duo that gets stuffed, you're just like, saw that before. But so your question is, who do they match up better against? It's probably Oregon, because Indiana just seems like they're so disciplined, and Miami still survived their lack of discipline tonight to a certain extent late. I think Indiana's built to beat a team that has that specific deficiency. I think both of these teams could beat Miami, and I think Miami could beat both of these teams, especially because it's at Hard Rock Stadium. It's not so bad to play a national championship game on your home turf.
And I was going to bring that up if you didn't. But, one of the things that we saw from Ole Miss a week ago in the Sugar Bowl is something that we saw again tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And in obviously the case of the Sugar Bowl, they got away with it. They almost got away with it tonight. But there were plenty of mistakes for Ole Miss, whether it was a busted coverage, whether it was, some close interceptions, whether it was some key penalties, that type of thing. Ole Miss was able to absorb that and still be in this game. But
right,
if it were going to be a matchup between, say, Ole Miss and Indiana, I would say there's a clear edge for Indiana, because Indiana does not make those mistakes.
Right.
Indiana does not give you mulligans. They find a way to make you pay for that type of stuff. And that would definitely, I think, give them a clear edge over Ole Miss. Miami is still too penalized. Miami still has some of those moments with Carson Beck. You mentioned one in the fourth quarter where you wonder, okay, where is he throwing it? What's going on? They still have a tendency with Shannon Dawson to do what you like to call too cute a clock.
Yep.
Either on third down with the Malley-Cat, Wildcat formation where they do that, or the flea flicker. Save for the fact that they're dominating on the line, they're going to run a flea flicker here, which I called, by the way. That was not the right moment to do it.
Yeah.
But Miami still makes a fair share of those kinds of mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they're going up against a team like in Indiana, I think you're right. There's a discipline edge that we need to discuss.
Mm-hmm.
If they were to go up against Oregon, obviously that would be a matchup that's rich with narratives, given Cristobal's previous stop, given the fact that I think you've got two maniac head coaches, which
definitely,
not to say Kurt Cignetti isn't his own brand of mass murderer,
sure he is.
But something between Lanning and Cristobal would, I think, be really, really interesting theater. And I think what I have the hardest time trying to figure out, Miami is really just a team of pure athletes. These guys are all athletes.
You mean that as a compliment, to be clear? You're not saying they're unpolished. You're saying that
no. I mean,
their position is crazy impressive. Yeah.
And we knew that this game was going to feature that on both sides, and I think we saw that on display. But Miami has guys that are just so versatile,
mm-hmm.
and you do so much with them. They can play ground and pound if they want to. They can obviously air it out with a veteran quarterback who, as they reminded us on the broadcast,
I don't know if airing it out is the right
for 7 years. They can air it out. They did air it out in this game. It wasn't an air raid, but they found ways to make big plays through the air.
Yeah.
They can beat you a number of different ways, and they have the athletes to do it. And I'm always worried about playing teams like that, because even if you know what the tendencies are, you still don't know how they're going to attack you, because they still have a multitude of ways they can win. And so that, for me, regardless of who they play, is what I think gives me the most cause for pause or favorite pet charity.
Yeah.
It's how are they going to deploy those athletes in space, and what's it going to look like when we see the individual matchups out there, based on tendencies. The other thing that I would add is, just because the Miami defensive line didn't play a huge factor in this game, it will be a really interesting matchup to see them go up against perhaps Indiana in an offensive line that doesn't typically get confused, but maybe hasn't played a line to this caliber. It would also be interesting to see this defensive front go up against
Indiana played against Ohio State. That's a really good defensive line.
It is, but I would argue that these are the two of the best edge rushers in all of college football.
Okay.
And the way that they use these guys is different than the way most people deploy their pass rushers. They're just really, really solid. Ole Miss had a good plan for that, but I'd be curious to see what Indiana's would look like. Again, with a line that does not get confused and is generally very, very good at handling guys like this. That would be an interesting matchup. And just to put a bow on it, if it's Miami going up against Oregon, I talked about the right side of the Oregon line. We saw a little bit about the right side of the Oregon line in their last game.
Sure.
You can get pressure on Dante Moore. Dante Moore is very good at navigating that pressure, but I'd be sometimes wasn't necessarily the best at doing it in the last game against Texas Tech. But I'd be real curious to see what this line would do against that Oregon front. So for sure, storylines abound. We will find out in less than 24 hours what the result's going to be and who's going to play in Miami against Miami for the national championship. But as it stands right now, we've got a final in the Fiesta Bowl, and it's 31-27 Canes.
The only thing I would add with regard to Oregon, Indiana, and potentially going to, well, one of those teams is going to go to Miami to take on Miami for the national championship game, is an advantage, or at least an experience point that Oregon has that Indiana doesn't, is Oregon traveled across the country, and forget about what happened with Penn State's season in its totality. Oregon went across the country and played in an absolutely raucous, bloodthirsty environment at night and won. And just in terms of environment, that's what, if Oregon is fortunate enough to beat Indiana, that's what will be waiting for them. There will be more Oregon fans than there were just my green shirt in the sea of the whiteout. But that test was it was a very emotional test for Oregon, and they, lost to Indiana a couple weeks later after the bye. But I don't think Indiana, maybe I'm forgetting something on their schedule where they traveled a far distance to play at night against a team in a hostile environment. Perhaps it doesn't matter at all, but Oregon did experience that and come out on the right side.
Well, I mean, Indiana traveled to Oregon and won.
That was during the day.
During the day.
It's a different thing, but yes.
And, of course, Indiana had that game in Beaver Stadium, not at night. Obviously, a different Penn State team.
No, that was an unbelievable win for Indiana. Yeah.
But an unbelievable win. These are two unbelievable teams. I'm excited to see
Yeah.
which one of those two emerges to square off against the number 10 seed Miami Hurricanes. Got into this tournament by the skin of their teeth. It was clearly controversial whether to put them in or leave them out. I don't think you or I had too much beef with them getting in. Miami did beat Notre Dame. We had other gripes about the playoff committee, but we felt pretty much through and through like the Canes should be in this. And if there is any triumph of the college football playoff committee, it is that Miami is now playing in this national championship game.
Yeah.
Say what you want about the process, which is clearly flawed and broken and very annoying to witness from afar. But if they did get anything right, it's this, because the Canes have clearly proven their mettle.
Yeah. And nobody doubted Miami in terms of their quality being of playoff caliber.
No.
But it was a weird road to get here.
It was a very weird road. It was a very weird road. But
and I guess we learned the SEC is not quite championship caliber for the third year in a row. And Ole Miss is the SEC's alpha dog that their coach didn't agree with, I guess. But that's where we stand right now. Ole Miss alpha in the SEC. One of us had the foresight and just the ability to really understand the wavelengths vibrating in this college football universe that Ole Miss was going to be a playoff team, right?
It wasn't me. It was not me, in case you haven't picked up the hint. It was you. You were in on Ole Miss.
But I was in on Ole Miss, was like, I think there's something special about Austin Simmons. So let's dial everything
future
back.
Mizzou quarterback Austin Simmons.
Right. No, an astonishing run for Ole Miss, a terrific run from Miami, and nobody had this as a semifinal matchup. And
no.
Kudos to both of these teams. Great stories up and down both of these rosters and seasons, and it looks like it'll be a great matchup no matter who wins Indiana, Oregon.
So the plan will be to do the same thing after the Peach Bowl. We will give you our quick reactions. We will post that out to YouTube. We will obviously be posting that out to the podcast feed. We would encourage everybody to hit follow or subscribe if you have yet to do so. Help support the team here. We've got 2 games left in the 2025 college football season, 1 semifinal, 1 national championship. We only know half of it right now. It's going to be the Miami Hurricanes, again, going home to play for their first national championship in quite some time.
Yep.
Your final score, 31-27, a barn burner out at the Fiesta Bowl. We will talk to you all tomorrow. In the meantime, for that guy over there, Dan, for myself, Ty Hildebrandt, thanks again for tuning in, for downloading, for listening, for supporting what we do. We'll catch you all soon.